All right, so this week we're going to work on a little bit of the Wi-Fi capabilities for the Pico. This is an example of some really basic code for scanning the network or the networks that are around you. There's really this for loop is the main part of this code. It's going to start this start scanning function, loop through all the networks that show up in that list, and then stop scanning. After that, this next line runs a sorted function, and that takes an array. So our array is our networks, runs it through a function. In this case, we haven't talked about lambdas, but runs it through a lambda function and sorts them by this RSSI, which is the signal strength of the network, and does a reverse true. So sorts of highest to lowest, but highest is least negative. Then loops through each one of the networks and prints out the data. So if we save this, we can see here that I've got my hotspot is running here, and it shows up multiple times apparently and has different signal strengths. So this is the settings I'm going to use to connect to my hotspot. And again, to set up those settings, you're going to use the settings.toml file that we talked about. And that looks like this, where you have your SSID, your password property. So this is just the name of a key equals some value. And I do have, for a future example, we've got the time zone. But the main two that you need here is just the SSID and the password. And then in your code, that eventually we'll call that. So another example is this basic server. We paste this in. This does kind of a few things. So it's going to print out that it's trying to connect to the Wi-Fi. It'll print out an error if it doesn't. I do instantiate the LCD screen here because when we connect, I'm going to grab the IP address that the Pico gets and print that to the LCD screen. But this is the main part for setting up. It's called a web server, essentially. We're going to connect to a pool, set it to static content, and the debug equals true means it's going to have a port of 5000 that I'll show you here in a second. Here we create a route, which just means when you go to the URL, if you just go to the root URL, so whatever the IP address is, colon, and then the port number, then you'll see this text serve a default static plain text message. Oh, sorry, that's the comment. You'll see this text, hello from CircuitPython HTTP server. And and then it serves it up. So if we save this file, we can see here, it does get a port started on port 5000. The LCD screen also contains that information. And if we open up put up a new browser tab, and if we go to 172.20.10, here we go, hello from the CircuitPython HTTP server. So that does all work. So this is essentially a web page being hosted by the Pico. So it's a really cool capability that we haven't talked about a ton. Mainly we've been focusing in this class on Python. If you've enjoyed programming, then what you can do is try learning some HTML and JavaScript. I would actually do for some really interesting capabilities. To kind of see what some of those capabilities are, we'll take a look at this more advanced. It's a pretty advanced web server. Not going to go through this in super detail, but we're going to import all the items we need. We do set up some neopixels so that we can actually, from the web page, control the color of the neopixels. We're going to set up our connection to the Wi-Fi and set up our server. And we're going to also turn on something called WebSockets. WebSockets are a mechanism for communicating between a web server and a client, or your browser, where data gets sent fairly efficiently. Something changes, you can send a packet. Normally, the way packets work is you open a connection, you send a request, you get a response back, and then that message is essentially done. WebSockets leave the connection open, and so they allow you to do some really kind of dynamic communication between the client and the server. The web page that we'll be using here is actually just this whole thing. It's just stored on the Pico as a string, some text string. This technically could be loaded from an index.html is a common file format, but load that in. That HTML file can then link in JavaScript files and all that kind of stuff. But this is just a really basic way to set this up. We're going to have a field that will contain the CPU temperature. Here you can see when we get a message back from the server, we're going to take that data and update the text content of that field, and you'll see that working here in a second. On an error, we'll actually pipe that error value into the text content also. And when we change the color picker, that will get a webserver.send, send that value back to the server and update the LEDs. There are two different URLs kind of that the server opens up. One is a /client, so it's the IP address :5000/client is actually going to be the web page. That's what returns the HTML template up here. And so that HTML content will get returned back if you browse to the /client address. The connect WebSocket is what's going to be used here to set up that connection to the WebSocket and instantiate that. And then we have the server.start, and then the methods for the WebSocket that kind of get defined here. This async means that it handles asynchronous communication, which is very event-driven. We won't go into too many of the details on that right now, but this allows you to just kind of wait for something to happen. So wait for a WebSocket request. That's going to set up the connection, that's going to get the red, green, blue values from the web page and update the NeoPixels. Send a message to the client. So this is how the CPU temperature is going to be sent. And this one is what kind of connects the client with the backend server. So when we save this, all right, very similar. Okay, you can go to this IP address, but if we go there and just refresh this, it says 404 not found back on the server. But if we go to /client, this is now the website that was defined up here. So we have this text value here, says CPU temperature, then another one that says NeoPixel color. And here we have CPU temperature and NeoPixel color. So this value will update. You can see it just changed there a little bit. And then for the NeoPixel color, if I change this, I don't have the webcam turned on right now, but as I change this, the color of the NeoPixels is changing, and you can even see here the RGB values, red, green, blue, being printed out. So that is coming from the web page back to the Pico's web server. And then you have the ability to, it's kind of like, pushing a button on the Pico and registering that. This is all just done through WebSockets. So it's a cool little capability to kind of host this web server on the Pico and allow it to connect to your your Wi-Fi. So I'll post this code, and hopefully you can get some of this to work. Good luck.